Welcome to the Toddcast, your weekly leadership nudge. My name is Todd Long, your host. This is episode number 20. My goal when I started out this year was to record 40 episodes. I'm halfway there. Pats on the back to myself. A little applause there. Yay, good job. I'm actually very, very thankful to have the desire, the motivation to keep doing this, and the encouragement from listeners that have said the value of this for them, so that keeps me going as well. So thank you for listening. And today, I've been talking about emotions of leading people, and I'm going to switch gears this week because there's some other things that were on my mind. I want to focus on complexity of leadership and a personal reality. That's the focus, complexity of leadership and then the personal reality. One of the exercises that I do with new groups that I'm taking them through a leadership development curriculum is I simply put the word leadership on a whiteboard, and I ask them to respond to that word and fill in the whiteboard and just put as many thoughts and ideas up on the whiteboard. And you can imagine what comes is written on the board. You see words like coaching and mentoring and vision and inspiration and motivation. Other words show up on the list that include trust. And then you push people a little bit, and they get to challenging, difficult, and not always liked, and all sorts of words fill up this board. And as we look at the board, as the group looks at the board, I ask them what they see. And one of the words that comes up every single time is complexity. And when we look at leadership and think about the word leadership, it is very, very complex. And then how do we take that complexity and then break that down into something that's meaningful for us? And then when it's individually we are struggling or challenging to work our way through something, then how do we make sense of that? So that's my focus today is I'm going to call it the complexity of leadership, but then there's a personal reality around this that I've been wrestling with that I want to share with you a little bit and then give you some hope and some ideas to help us move forward, help myself move forward in this as well. So let's make this happen. Welcome to the Toddcast, your weekly leadership nudge. Welcome to the Toddcast, great ideas you'll love. If you think about leadership development and the study of leadership development, it really impacts or is impacted by a number of different academic disciplines. We can go through the list pretty quickly, pretty easily. We can think about business and organizational operations. Sociology is another academic study that influences leadership. Communication studies. So much of leadership development or being an effective leader is about the ability to communicate in different ways, in different aspects, in different environments. Think about psychology, which impacts motivation and how people think and behave with one another and interact internally and externally. I would even say philosophy is a part of leadership development or influences leadership development. Even our own physical wellness impacts the way we lead ourselves and the people also. Theology, we can overlay that as another discipline that impacts leadership development. I think that's one reason I was drawn to the idea and the study and the practice and the wrestling with leadership development because it is impacted by so many different aspects of our life. So that's the one reality of the complexity of leadership development. And then we overlay our real world. I mean, just stop and think about the real world we live in right now and the things that impact us, our societies, our organizations. There's politics, there's the economy, there's war, there's tragedy and struggling and famine, there's health issues. And there's also blessings and opportunities and good things that come to us. When we just pause for a minute and think about all those things that we're wrapped around in every single day, there's a complexity of our world that we're constantly navigating, working through, both those challenges, but also those good things, those blessings that come to us. That's just the starting point of thinking about leadership and leading others and leading ourselves well as the academic disciplines and the complexity of that, then the complexity of the world that we live in. And then we get down to the personal level. This week has been a really challenging week on a variety of different levels. I won't go into all the details and all the stories around it, but there's been tragedy with personal friends of mine. There have been deep, deep hurts and pains. There have been personal situations that our family has dealt with that are really beyond words to communicate and share. Those of you who know me personally know our personal story. As I said, I'm not going to share that here because I don't think that's the platform. But there's a reality of life that has hit me this week that has been difficult. I can come on this podcast and talk about all the good things and all the great things that are happening, but there's a reality that, no, there's weeks that are really, really difficult, really, really tough. And so I have to pause for a few minutes and go, wow, there's a complexity of this world that I live in. I'm trying to lead myself and lead my family and lead the organizations and the companies and the clients that I work with as best as I can. And there's also the reality of have to leading myself well in the midst of these struggles and these challenges. And two things came to my mind as I've been wrestling with this week. One comes from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And Stephen Covey wrote this in his book many years ago. He talks about the circle of influence and the circle of concern. And the exercise is simply looking at your world right now and identifying what are those things that are outside of your control. Those activities, those experiences, those things in our world that are out here, the circle of concerns that you can't do anything about. And then also recognizing our circle of influence. What are the things you can actually influence in ourselves and the people around us? So that exercise came to my mind, but then a more powerful exercise for me personally, because as I said, theology and faith plays into leadership development. And it's a prayer that was written by Reinhold Niebuhr. He is a theologian and political thinker who lived from 1892 to 1971. And he wrote this prayer. It's a prayer that many of us know and have heard before. Here's the prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And when I think about this exercise of circle of influence and circle of concerns, and I overlay that prayer, then I begin to have a little bit of hope. It gives me a reality check of the things that I can influence and the things that I can't influence, and then also the faith to have a prayer that gives me the wisdom to know what I can do and what I can't do. Here's the try it out section. It's a personal reflection, and it's considering your world right now and what are those things that you're wrestling with that fall into that circle of influence or fall into the circle of concern. And what can you do? And then I would also encourage us to overlay that serenity prayer over this because we need wisdom to understand the things that I can influence and the things that I cannot influence. Thank you so much for listening to the Toddcast, your weekly leadership nudge. I'm going to end the quote of the week with the prayer of the week, both connected to what I just shared a minute ago. I pray, God, that you'll grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.